The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericaempowerment.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Living Well with Ann Beal. Our show is a health show, a lifestyle show, and an empowerment show rolled into one. Get ready to hear some stories of success, healthy living tips, and suggestions to get motivated and live your best life. Now, here is your host, Ann Beal.
Welcome to Living Well. This is Ann Beal. I am a little emotional today. We've had a lot going on in Texas. I don't know how many people have heard about all the tornadoes that hit here. So we decided, Dr. Jim Slaughter's joining me, we decided that today we wanted to talk about, for the new year, just a way for people to handle when traumatic situations strike. And so we have titled this show, Cleaning Up the Emotional Debris from a Tornado. Now, the interesting thing is tornadoes leave much more in their wake than physical destruction. They leave personal trauma and psychological turmoil. In addition to those who are directly hit, the devastation of a tornado is an apt metaphor for all those tornadoes of life that drop out of the blue and change your life in a moment. One day you're on top of the world, and the next day the world's on top of you. We wanted to give you 10 choices, skills that lead you to recovery, strength, and a greater sense of purpose when traumatic situations strike, when disasters hit. Because most people worry about things that never happen. And the things that happen are the things we never expect. And so those disasters and turmoil in life make you feel powerless. And you eventually learn a powerful secret. You do have life-altering choices in how you respond. And that's what we want to let you know. The 10 choices that make or break you so that you can understand what to do and what not to do. So when you're stuck in the tornadoes of life and you're trying to recover, you make the best choices. And, you know, the tornadoes here wiped out most of Rowlett, a small town, and Garland, and people are cleaning up the debris. And so as they dig out from under the rubble of the tornado outbreak here, and many thousands were injured, many were going home from their families on Christmas, the day after Christmas. Many were on the highway and just got blown off the highway. So a lot of people here are saying, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. Dr. Bev Smallwood is a specialist in dealing with tragedies, disasters that strike. And she actually has a book called This Wasn't Supposed to Happen to Me. 10 make or break choices when life steals your dreams and rocks your world. She sheds light on the emotional side of this tragedy and how you recover from the emotional debris when the rug gets pulled out from under you and you get hit. And for it to happen at Christmas time here has been very devastating for the area. It's bad enough when it happens normally, but that's not what's supposed to happen at Christmas. And it's definitely not supposed to happen when you're out shopping for presents, on the day after the Christmas, the big sales, when people are so excited because they have their Christmas money, and they've had a wonderful time, and they're just on their way home to recover. So we want you to think about these people here, if you can, raise them up in prayer, and we want to just give you some ideas to help them as well, if your heart moves you with that. So that's a long intro. Welcome to the show, Dr. Slaughter.
Thank you, Ann. It's always good to be here with you and talking about these important things. And, you know, I don't think life ever becomes quite so real as it does when tragedy strikes and the things that you've been discussing happen to us. That's happened here just in the last few days with the tornadoes that hit us, and it becomes real when you see the total devastation on news broadcasts and things like that, where you can actually see this, what's happened. I-beams wrapped curlicue around trees, and nobody knows where the beam came from, and things like that. And you think, oh my goodness, how could that possibly happen?
And that's in a town you used to live in.
Yeah, I lived.
And your brother lived there.
I did. Yeah, we lived there, and the tornado actually, the swath cut by the tornadoes. It was more than one that came through there. Just cut right across the very edge of the area where we lived. And so, when things like this happen, you realize that life really is uncertain, and you have to make some decisions ahead of time, going forward from here. And on the verge of the new year is a good time to do that. The thing is, it's important for listeners, I think, and for us as well, to think about these choices that we're going to be talking about now, rather than trying to remember what some of them are when things happen that are tragic. And so we want to give people an opportunity going into the new year to know some ways of handling the hard things about life better in this new year, so they can be happier and live better.
Well, and disaster does strike for everyone, some more than others. And I was thinking about that early this morning, how we've been through a lot of things. I've been through a lot of things. You've been through a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But we've never been through that. Never. No. And so really praying for the people today. There's so many people that are having to live with friends and family today, that are searching through debris for their stuff. There was a 2-day-old baby that was killed in a house, and the parents lived. And so I can't even imagine that. People are in shelters. People, the kind of tough thing was the tornadoes hit the day after Christmas, and then the snow came that night. Mm-hmm. And so the snow and the sleet and the rain, and so it was just like kind of a double whammy, in that they don't, their homes had big holes in them, or half a home, and everything's getting snowed and rained on.
Yeah,
and it was very cold.
Bleak, very bleak.
Yeah. Yes, bleak. And so we just wanted to go through these really good things to think about to be successful. Even though you see the physical damage of all the things that have happened with tornadoes, and there's other things, tsunamis, hurricanes, anything like that. There's also things that just knock you down, that come out of nowhere, that are big. And so we want you to know, so there are actually 10 things that are very important, the choices to make. And if you want to know more about this, Bev Smallwood's book is actually out of print now, I think, but you can find details about it. Anyway, it's called When, This Wasn't Supposed to Happen to Me, which is a great title. It's a great title for thinking about, and a lot of people say that, and coming down to anything, marital strife, divorce, affairs, anything like that, when you get hit by that. So,
yeah, I've heard people say, I didn't sign up for this.
Oh, I didn't sign up for that.
And it's just another way of saying this wasn't supposed to happen to me. And I suspect there's not a person on earth who doesn't think that at one time or another because of things that happen.
So one of the first things we want to talk about is when it happens, you are in shock. You're in shock. And so you do feel a sense of denial, like you can't believe it happened. And people say that when they end up at someone else's house or shelter or something like that, definitely if it's a friend's house or a family's house, there's a part of you that almost feels like it didn't really happen. And that is natural. What's not natural is to stay there and that it didn't really happen, or avoiding it. So one of the most important things about health is, to think about this. So, Dr. Slaughter, I have a question for you, Jim. True or false? What you don't know can't hurt you.
Wow, that's very false. In fact, I would turn it around. I'd say what you don't know is what's going to hurt you the most. Unawareness is a huge enemy of all of us. And I tell clients, people who come to me for help with things like this, how important awareness is. Awareness is the first step towards health. It's the first step towards redemption. It's the first step towards getting better and living well. And so what I, what I don't know will hurt me. What I do know is going to help me.
Yes, what you do know. How about if you know it, but you don't want to deal with it, so you just pretend it doesn't exist?
Well, you can hide in a hole. You can be an ostrich. You can try to go to a cave, and but the problem is what you're doing is you're not only putting it off. You're going to have to deal with reality sooner or later. But the longer we put it off, put off dealing with reality and trying to do something to get better, the worse it gets. And so we sort of, as we dig a hole, we are creating more problems by doing that.
And I think that John Maxwell calls that having a loss and then creating more losses from that loss.
Well, that's exactly right. He's right about that. That's what we do when we wait to act.
Or deny. But I think that when you do that, it's usually something really big and overwhelming. There are people that do it with smaller things, but most people, it's things that are just overwhelming. And I would think this would be something that would be just so overwhelming. And so you feel like there's part of you that doesn't feel like you have the skills to deal with it. So you just don't think about it. Try not to think about it.
Well, also, and to be fair, in this situation, there is such an enormous emotional impact that you feel like you've been flattened and you don't know how to get up, and so there is the reality of that. I mean, it's a huge hit. It's like being run over by a truck or whatever, and yet, in order to be okay and even to help people around us who are struggling, it's important for us to move from the denial stage and to a more of a reality stage, knowing what to do about that.
I think reality sometimes seems too overwhelming, right?
Oh, yeah.
But one of the most important things to be successful in recovering is to face reality. And there are people that face reality and take action. They just immediately do that. That's just their personality type, and so if you struggle with that, if you struggle with facing the reality of it and taking action, we just want to encourage you that it is one of the most important things to accept what happened and make goals to move forward. And that's what, when we, all the interviews of people who have been successful through this, they said that was the first step to just face it, accept it. Okay, this has happened. And what do I do now? So what we find is there's 4 different levels of denial when people, you don't either just deny or not deny. I wish it was that simple. There are people that totally deny that there's a problem, right? And that's not most people, but there are people that do that. There are others that acknowledge it, but they call it little. They minimize it. And they kind of say what cliche things. It's not a big deal. This is small. We'll get through it. This is not small.
Right.
This is not small. This is so they have trouble just admitting that it's a big problem. Whether it be tornadoes or it be, a severe addiction or something like that. They just don't want to face it. Others deny that change is possible. Like, why bother? It's not going to help. Why live like that? Let's just deal with it. Let's just accept it and not do anything really about it because, there's really no reason because there's not a possibility it'll change. There's no hope there.
Right.
So others admit there's a problem and say that it needs to be addressed and even know some possible ways to deal with it and address it, but they delay. They just say, they don't feel that urgency. They're busy. Like when I'm not busy, when I, have the time, when I, so they put it off. Mm-hmm. And so those are the 4 ways that denial is so destructive. And so not everyone's the same. People do it differently. It looks differently. And so the urgency is often, that feeling of urgency is what people that are using denial to cope don't have. And some people have described it as living in denial is like having a weak or dead battery in your smoke alarm.
Yeah, it would be like that, I think.
Because the smoke alarm is a warning. It's supposed to get you to act and run out of the house. Okay, run out of the house. And so it just is not loud enough, so you don't take it seriously. You just ignore it. And it needs to be loud enough to hurt your ears, right?
Yeah.
To make you either want to get away from it, get out of the house, or something like that. And so that's so important. So my question, I guess, for you out there is, what are you pretending not to know? What are you avoiding not to face?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask. And for going back to what you said earlier, we have been hit here by real tornadoes, serious weather that has been devastating and destroying. But tornado becomes a figure of other kinds of tragedy, and so everyone faces a tornado in some sense at one time or another. And so that question is good to ask right now. What's going on with me?
Tornadoes in life are things that destroy, cause destruction. They don't always kill. And most people are not killed in tornadoes. Most people are injured or traumatized, or they lose so much, but it doesn't kill them.
Yeah, enormous loss.
I mean, they may wish they were dead in some ways, enormous loss, yeah. And so I just wanted to let you know that Jesus tells us, you will know the truth and it will set you free. It's the truth that sets you free. And so the people who are most productive and growing in their lives through, after these tornadoes in their life, are aware and they act.
Right, and I wanted to say too that there's a phrase that's going around these days that you don't particularly like, and it's it is what it is. Okay,
it is
and
what it is.
And there's the positive side of that phrase, I think, is that it does kind of highlight reality. I think people who use that phrase are trying to say, okay, the reality is this is what's happening now. And so that's a positive side of that phrase. There's a negative, but the positive thing is the awareness that you mentioned. I am aware it's bad. I need to act, and that's where we begin to see some coming up out of the pit.
So act. We want you to act. To be aware is not being a victim.
Right.
It's not letting life beat you. It's so you can beat it. And, Bev Smallwood, Dr. Smallwood, she does say that statement, one day you're on top of the world, and the next day the world's on top of you.
That's what it feels like. Yep.
And the world being on top of you, yes, you have been victimized, but it doesn't make you a victim. I mean, yes, you're a victim at the moment. And so that's step two. The second choice is to... instead of being a victimhood or victim mind, stay victim, you become responsible. Okay.
Good point.
So instead of the first one, which is instead of being in denial, you face reality and you act. The second one is victimhood versus responsibility.
Right. There's kind of a victim mentality that we can get into, that this has happened to me, woe is me, there's nothing I can do about it. Oh my goodness, but that's not true. And moving from the idea, the mentality, the mindset of being a victim into someone who's responsive and responsible is a hugely important part of this picture.
I think that maybe I did that for a while. I had many years of my life where I was just in shock, right? And so it's not necessarily that I was complaining and saying, oh, woe is me, chronically having pity parties, right. But I think that I got stuck, just in shock and I think, when people describe playing the victim or being, oh my gosh, please just do something. I think that for me, from my tragedy, I just kind of dug my heels in, sunk into a comfortable cave, maybe, and just existed there and didn't do all the things I was doing before, speaking and traveling and just incredible TV and radio and all that. I just kind of sunk in. And I didn't plan on doing that as long as I did. But I just kind of stopped my life for a while. And so when I read about this, victims always looking for someone else to blame, always having a complaint, but never any real solutions. I didn't complain, but I didn't really have any solutions because from what I was going through, I didn't have anyone who could really help me with that. And so I did get stuck. And so I really encourage you out there not to become a chronic victim. And you don't have to look like a victim. I looked very functional to most people, People would never have said that about me, but what they didn't know was what I stopped doing. They didn't know that my life just came to a stop.
Yeah, good point.
Right at 40, everything just reeled everything in and just started going day to day. But when you do that and you don't come out of that, years just fly by. And so the alternative to victimhood is to take responsibility about what you can do where you are. And I looked up the definition of responsibility, and there's so many definitions. But basically, this is what it is. Doing all you can with all you have where you are right now.
I knew you were going to say that, actually. And
Really?
I did, because I think that's exactly right. And I think one of the reasons that we have a tendency to freeze, we have this paralysis of analysis thing going on, or we don't want to move, or we're afraid to move, or whatever, is that often we do not have, we don't know what our resources are. We don't know who to turn to. We don't know how much money it's going to take to fix something. If it's really devastating, we really have no idea, how we're going to handle that. And I think everybody's been there at one time or another. I think a part of this also, and is the idea of options. There was a time when I honestly, I was so stuck, just like you. I didn't realize that there were options that I had. I kind of had sort of built a mindset that I would just keep going down the same path, and there was only this kind of tunnel that I could go down, and I had no recourse but to follow it out to its very end. I had no idea, about other things that were available to me. And so I just kind of had blinders on. And so what I've realized is that I've got options. There are resources. And so one of the first things that we do, to get out of this victim mentality is to realize, okay, there are resources out there that I can use. There are options that I have before me that I may not see yet, but I can take them, and they can be good for me, and they can help set new direction for me.
I know that once I found people who had not just gone through what I'd gone through, because there were lots of people like that, but people that really had the solutions that gave me hope that they could fix it, that they were true roadmaps to health.
Oh, yeah.
Step by step. Mm-hmm. When they started getting that and I started seeing that and taking part in that, it was amazing, my recovery. And so, of course, I think sometimes did they not have that? Did I just not take action quick enough? Whatever. But basically, I don't want pain to define you. I don't want you to define yourself to be defined by your misfortune.
Right.
That everything was wiped out in a tornado, or your husband, hired escorts and 50 or whatever, and left you. Okay, you don't want to be defined by your misfortunes. Pain comes, but you have pain. And you have misfortune, but that is not all of you. You have a lot of successes. And so you can bounce back and recover. And so lots of people have done that. And, Beyonce, if you bring it to today, people know who Beyonce is. And when she they probably don't either know this or remember this, that she was very humiliated when she tried out, where she competed in Star Search, that I think she was like 9 or 11, and her group, the girls, didn't win, didn't do very well. So, they said she was very humiliated, and she thought and was told that they weren't going to go anywhere. So that's the humiliation part. Thomas Edison was told he was, it always cracks me up, too stupid. I mean, in school, they told him he was too stupid to really amount to anything. Didn't really even need to finish school. We know that's not true. Well, J.K. Rowling, she wrote the Harry Potter series. She was told she wasn't a good writer. And so when you think of the things that happened, I mean, that was her dream, and it was ripped out from under her, J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
And so she picked herself back up along the way, got more skills, and didn't stop. Beyonce didn't let her, she didn't stop, and her family didn't stop. But so many people, when they have that kind of rejection, stop. And I remember that I went on KERA to do a fund. One of my friends asked me to come and do the fundraiser on TV because someone didn't show, and God, I just said sure, no problem, like I do. It was the most embarrassing thing. They didn't have a script. I didn't know how to use the teleprompter yet, and the words moved. And so everyone I knew was watching. And it was just, I was walking off stage to get Wishbone, the stuffed animals, walking off not stage, but walking out of my marks. So I didn't know marking very well, and they were so sweet to me, and they taught me after that. But everyone saw that because I made the dumb mistake of telling everyone. My kids' class was watching that. My kids, like Katie's or Ashley's kindergarten class, I don't remember what it was, but they all saw it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, you saw it.
And I felt so bad for you because I kind of knew what was going on. I knew what a helpless feeling it could be to be in your situation, and yet you did so well with what you had to work with. And I want to say this, and that is that you are the kind of person, and as long as I've known you, you've been this way. You do not let stuff like that stop you.
But I did.
Well, it didn't seem like it did.
It was
just kept going. No, I don't mean on the program. I just mean after that.
I did.
I
let it. Yeah, it was like 30 years ago or 25 years ago or something. I stopped.
Okay.
I stopped at that point with all the acting, and my agent kept trying to give me stuff, and that was just a side thing. I didn't even get paid for that. I mean, I had all these shows and things I had done and got paid quite a bit for, right? But that one was just like out of the blue for a friend. But it knocked me back because I felt so humiliated, and I thought, okay, I can't do this. I don't know how to read a teleprompter. And so it wasn't until someone came along and was like, no, you can learn the teleprompter, and you can do this. But so there are things like that when I think about Beyonce. A lot of those people don't have people come along and pick them up and say, wait, this is not hard. You can learn teleprompter, and you can learn this and the marks, and you're so good, you can't stop. And so there are things that knock us down, and humiliation, embarrassment, but tragedy. Tragedy that just rips your heart out, like what I went through, and you freeze. But don't stay a victim. You have been victimized. You were a victim at that moment, but you can become a conqueror.
Right.
And so these people overcame. I mean, you look at Thomas Edison. I mean, oh my gosh, people. He showed them, but more than anything, he became a conqueror and successful, and that's what we want for you. So I'm just gonna, suggest that though you may have been victimized, you refuse to actually become a victim wallowing in self-pity. And self-pity is kind of a cruel word, I think, in that it just isn't the greatest word. I think what you can do is wallow in your pain. I don't really get that many people that just stay there. Woe is me. It's been so hard for me. I can't, on and on and on. I probably, in the longest I've been doing this, I have had like maybe 1 or 2 people. I don't think most people do that. What they do is they just can't. They just kind of give up.
Yeah, and they, often people become their behavior tends to change sometimes, and they become more cautious. They're not willing to take risk. They hide in their, like you mentioned, the cave, and there's such a tendency to do that, and we have to be careful about that, not to do that. And so we get into a negative mindset where we're basically telling ourselves negative prophecies that can come true, rather than thinking of it in terms of positive outcome. And so shifting a mindset is important with that.
So just say to yourself, though I had no control over what happened to me, I choose to exercise control over my thoughts and actions. And I'll focus on the resources I have and the actions I could take. And I take each small step that leads to the rebuilding of my life. And by taking action, you're being responsible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right there, we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we have a lot to do to get through all these. And so stay right here, and we'll see you back here at Living Well.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
Life Solutions Coaching and Counseling in Fort Worth, Texas is a full-service wellness clinic providing individual, group, and family counseling, one-on-one coaching for life and wellness, and naturopathic treatments of medical massage therapy combined with essential oils to ensure you reach your health and wellness goals. Sessions are available in person or by phone. Get started on your new life today. Just call 817-232-1363 or go to lifesolutionscoachingandcounseling.com or email them at lifesolutions cc@yahoo.com.
We're all living in the moment, but you never know when life is going to take a unique turn. It doesn't have to be a challenge, but perhaps more of a detour to get where we need to be. On The Sky's the Limit, host Karen Levitt knows that experience, having faced it herself. Learn about her journey from a life-changing event to where she is now. Her guests are amazing people who are living these experiences and overcoming obstacles. Learn from their stories every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Empowerment.
We're on Facebook along with some of the greatest minds of the world, and that includes you. Visit us on Facebook at Voice America Empowerment.
You are listening to Living Well with Ann Beal. We'd love to hear from you with comments and questions about the show. Please send us an email to ablivingwell@gmail.com. That's ablivingwell@gmail.com. Now, back to this week's show.
Welcome back. This is Ann Beal, and I have Dr. Jim Slaughter here. And we are talking about the tornadoes that struck here in Texas around us, that wiped out homes, killed people, injured tons. And it's so close to home, we can see the devastation everywhere. And so we wanted to help more and keep helping. And so one of the ways that we wanted to do this was help people who've had tornadoes in life and disaster struck them, no matter what it is. Out of nowhere, you've just had the carpet just ripped out from under you. And Dr. Bev Smallwood's book, That Wasn't Supposed to Happen to Me. Yeah. That wasn't supposed to happen to me. And we've all said that at some time in life. And so we are going through the 10 make or break choices.
There are people who are listening right now who are going through something like this.
Right.
It may not have been a real tornado like this. It might not have destroyed a house, but it is destructive. And they feel like, oh my, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where to go from here. And so these things are very, very important for people out there right now. It's important for me. It's important for you, and our friend. It's just how to live life well, which is what we're talking about.
So the 10 choices that make it, that make you survive and recover with strength and purpose. And so we went through the first one, which is denial versus reality. And so we said, face reality, take action. 2 is victimhood versus responsibility. And we went through that in the last segment as well. That you have been victimized, but you don't want to stay a victim. By choosing not to be a victim, using and seeking out the resources, taking action, finding the things to do, and moving forward is being responsible. Responsible for your own future, responsible for what happens to you, responsible for how this turns out. Not leaving it up to other people, right. Not waiting and just saying, no one's helped me, not blaming, not sulking, not criticizing, but reaching out and helping. And I know that right now there are people who are out helping find things in houses. They're going through houses. They're helping people. They're taking in people. They're providing food and shelter. Even people who, right after it happened in Rowlett was where, Dr. Slaughter had lived and his brother and family. The actual victims were immediately after they came out of their homes and dug out, I guess you could say, they started helping find other people, going into the other, trying to look through debris. They became like the first responders, right there helping. And so instead of getting caught up in what's happened to them right then, they became first responders and rescuers and helpers.
They became a resource of their own,
Right.
to other people. And so we look for resources, and we can become human resources to help people dig out of their rubble. And, you and I both know in our field, it's well known that one of the most healthy things to help people recover from a serious tragedy of any kind is to have them begin helping other people.
Well, and it is interesting that this, disasters bring people together.
Absolutely.
And there are people helping. They've had 1,800 volunteers sign up since Monday, and today's Wednesday. And so that is incredible. And those people are already being signed ways to help. And so they'll get much, much more. And so one of the things, number 3, is why versus how.
Yeah, and why is such a negative question? Why is a bad question? How and what are good questions? Why leads to negative thinking? How and what lead to positive thinking? Why lets us just kind of sit and simmer in our own stuff?
I think it's human to, I think it's very natural to go to why.
It is.
And that is, there's time for that to sulk, okay, and be like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Why? But I do think I stayed there too long. Mm-hmm. And I had it out with God and had it out with God and had it out with God and had it out with God. Like, why? Why wouldn't you have protected me? Why would you have let this happen? On and on and on. And so there are certainly times to ask why. There's some good uses for this, so that you can prepare better next time. But when it comes to a tornado, that is not anything you had control over. And most of the time, disaster strikes and we didn't have any control over it. And so, my suggestion is have it out with God about it. Mm-hmm. Don't hold the emotions in. We don't want you to do that. It's a very unhealthy thing to do as far as it makes you sick. And one of the best things you can do is let it out. Mm-hmm. Write it out. Scream it out, dance it out, do whatever you have to do to get it out. You want to get your emotions out.
And that's what keeps you from staying there,
right.
and just continuing to experience the misery of it.
And I think that, I don't know, so many people call it different things. Freud called it the ego, and, certain psychologists call it the child brain. We call it the false self, but it's a part of the brain that just tells you, and it's not true, but it just makes you kind of believe that if you can find out all the reasons why and get all the answers, then you can protect yourself from this ever happening again.
Right.
And I don't think that no matter what you do, you can protect yourself from never being in a tornado. But what you can do is, and this is the how, you can take action to protect yourself in the future. But you do that by the how, not the why. The why is just that person or that thing that victimized you at the time. And just figuring out why they did it doesn't make it so that no one else does it or nothing else happens to you. And so what most everyone as a professional in this field would say in coaching or counseling, and definitely the providers here at Life Solutions Coaching and Counseling, we believe that why is a distraction. It distracts you from the task at hand. So you don't want to stay there too long, because then you're just distracted in the bulk of everything.
Yeah.
A better question is, how can you take what happened and turn it into something good? How is practical, action-oriented things that gets you moving? Okay, so how? That's a better question. Don't get stuck in why. So
Now, what's the next step? Now what?
Now
what do I do to begin moving and acting on this?
And so, the bigger the tragedy, the harder it is. So one of the things I just suggest, set a small goal for today and a bigger goal for the future. Take small steps and move forward. If you can take big steps, great. Okay. So the commitment I would suggest is choose to move into action by asking how. I can't rewrite history. That is not natural. It can't happen. So, unfortunately, I wish we could. How far would we go back? I will fill my day with activities that inch me along or jump me along my journey to recovery, and I'll put the process of my life back together. Right? Putting your life back together. And so that's the why versus how. Do you have anything else about that, Dr. Slaughter?
No, I think that's the important thing is the important thing is not to stay in the why, but to move to the how and the what. Yeah.
So the fourth one is doubt versus faith. There's no way that this would cause you to doubt. If you're a religious person, you would doubt. And I think everyone is a religious person. Even if they're an atheist or an agnostic, they're choosing a faith. They're choosing a belief system of how everything was created and how they're supposed to live and all that kind of stuff. And so anytime there's a disaster, you doubt it. You doubt what you believe. It questions. When things happen that we don't understand, it just, I don't know, it rocks our faith.
Sure. It can do that for sure.
So doubt, there is a moment for that. There's time for that, to doubt it. What's interesting is if you have a strong faith, you get stronger. If you have a weak faith, you get weaker. So if you have a weak faith, your faith gets weaker.
Yeah, another thing too to remember, I think about doubt and anger towards God is that at least the God of the Scriptures, the God of the Bible, is he's not gonna come down on you or be critical or condemning because you doubt him. He's going to be accepting. What God does invite us to do is to talk to him about it and to express our emotions, even if they're dark, to him. And God has he has a way of bringing a calmness to us when we do that. And we end up moving through that and our faith becoming even stronger than it was before. But there's a connection with God that's very important about that to make that happen.
Well, and I think it's a faulty belief system, really. And people don't really think it through as being faulty beliefs. But, Rabbi Kushner in his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, talks about that. So the faulty belief system is, what did I do to deserve this? Right? Which would say that if something bad happens to me, I must have been bad.
Right.
And if something good happens to me, which people don't ever think of this, if something good happens to me, I must have been good.
Right.
But that is not at all how the world works at all.
No.
And so it's a faulty belief system that it gives us I see this so much, especially, people who don't believe anything, they say that they're atheist or whatever. Their belief system is on themselves. They believe if I do this, this will work. If I'm good, this will happen. If I'm moral, then people should this, should that. And so really it's you're relying on yourself, really. People who have faith in other things rely on other things or higher power. And so, but the world does not work that if something bad happens to you, you must have been bad. And that was what the book of Job in the Bible was all about. Tragedy struck him, and all his friends were like, wow, you must have really been bad. Oh, my gosh, you must be sinning, blah, blah, blah. None of that was true.
Right.
And so it's in a lot of ways, a terrible story about Job. It can get you mad. But, life doesn't work like that. Not that way or in the reverse. If you're good, it doesn't mean all these good things will happen. I think that in general, though, that if the control we do have is to live a good life and your life goes well.
Right.
But it doesn't mean disaster doesn't strike. Disaster strikes everyone.
Right.
And it can be your fault because you make bad decisions or whatever, but it usually isn't. But either way, recovering from it is, having faith. So remaining in faith, remaining in your beliefs, there's three components of hope. Faith is hope. Having hope. You've got to have some goals. You have to have the willpower and energy and determination. And you have to have the how to.
Okay.
And that's what, hope gives you a belief that you'll know how. Hope gives you a belief that you'll get through it. You've got to have hope. You don't want to lose hope.
That things will be better, that you can get through this. Yeah.
So what we want to suggest for you is no matter what setbacks come, to say, I choose faith. I focus on hope. I choose to make the best of the way things turned out. And you can choose to do that for things to turn out well instead of turning out not well. I want your heart to say yes to the beckoning of tomorrow and the future and hope for you. And so people who have been very successful through this and have become survivors, the most important things are, one of them is to have faith and hope instead of doubt.
Right.
Okay?
Good point.
All right. So let's go on to bitterness. Ooh, yeah.
Bitterness is one of the worst words in the whole English language.
Yeah, and it makes you not as resilient.
No, it makes you hard, yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of, that's a good word, because if you think of, they talk about resilience being like a rubber band, that you bounce back. And so rubber band is a great demonstration. Bitterness makes you hard, and if a rubber band's hard, it'll break, right?
Right.
And so, they talk about one of the signs of the end times. It says in Matthew 24 that people will be easily offended. They won't bounce back. There won't be forgiveness. They'll just be offended, and they'll get bitter. So one of the successful tools is forgiveness, not bitterness. And right. At a time when you need to operate in the power of God, bitterness just covers that. Bitterness takes that away.
Yes, it does.
It takes away your power.
I want to say, too, when talking about this, one thing I've observed is that often bitterness kind of comes from resentment, from a kind of chronic residual resentment that people have sometimes towards other folks or towards circumstances that take place. And like the guy said, when we are resentful and we resent someone, it's like taking poison and hoping the other guy's going to die.
Yeah.
So it just eats us up on the inside, but that produces bitterness, which
Right.
leads to this hardness that we have.
Well, and I think people think if they stay angry at somebody, they're punishing that person.
Yeah.
But Oprah said, I remember Oprah saying that she had so much bitterness towards this person for years. I mean, just years and years. And she believed she was punishing this person.
Right.
And she said, until I was driving down Rodeo Drive one day, and they were walking into a very expensive jewelry store just laughing with all their friends. And she realized that they weren't affected at all.
Right.
And that bitterness and resentment had been on her mind every day.
So it had affected Oprah.
It made her sick.
Not her friend.
Yeah.
Right.
So she decided at that moment to forgive, and it takes all that all that power from that person away. It makes you live again.
Right.
Because they are not affected by your bitterness. You are affected.
Yeah.
And even if you're bitter at God, and somebody tells me they don't believe in God, I know they're very angry at God. I totally get that. I understand being angry at God. But that's denial versus reality, in my opinion. It's not facing reality. They don't want to live by any kind of authority. They don't want any kind of authority over them. They want to make up their own rules. Well, I wish that was true. I wish we could do that. I'd love to make up my own rules about tornadoes.
Yeah,
to be able to direct them where I want them to go. If I want to clear land, direct them to where there's trees and let them just wipe out that acre for me. That would be very helpful.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not how life works. And so that's just my opinion. Okay. So that's the bitterness versus forgiveness. How about the guilt versus self-forgiveness? Because forgiveness of other people that takes the anger and bitterness away. There are so many clients we have that have not forgiven themselves, and they live in this guilt. That's
true. That we do kind of tend to do that, don't we? I've even had to develop an awareness about this in my own life. We can forgive other people, but we have such a hard time forgiving ourselves for mistakes that we make, for things that we have done. Maybe we've sinned against someone else in the past, and it could be a long past back.
Past.
And yet we have a hard time allowing ourselves freedom, from that. We keep ourselves in bondage sometimes.
And the more perfectionist the person is, the more self-disciplined, the more honestly, the more successful they are in some ways, the harder they are on themselves. And so when we do coaching and they're going to the retreat, which is a very important time in coaching, when they go on the retreat and they go stay somewhere like a cabin or spa or somewhere, the work that they're doing there, we determine that by asking them, is your anger at yourself or is your anger at others? And it's really 50-50. And I was surprised how many people, because I was more I think I tended to turn mine inward more, and then eventually started going outward. Neither, not in an unhealthy way, but you, I know, tend to go inward with yours, and so ongoing guilt doesn't help you. Self-forgiveness is very important because if it's not forgiveness and it's anger and bitterness, disappointment, whatever you want to call that, frustration, it builds and it builds and it builds and it makes you sick. And it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you. You just mulk you're mad at yourself. So who's the victim there? You become the victim again.
Right.
You're not taking action to move forward because you're distracted by guilting, telling yourself how terrible you are, or you don't deserve it, or whatever, which isn't true. Just moving forward. And when people get mucked up in guilt, I know the other one is isolation versus connection. That's number 7.
Right.
They tend to isolate themselves.
Yeah, it's a way of protecting ourselves. We isolate, and we do that in so many different ways. Elijah in the scriptures went into a cave and he just sat there because things were so bad in Israel, and he was scared for his life. He thought he was going to die, and God says, Elijah, what are you doing in there?
Yeah.
Get out of there, And so we need to move out into
Connection with people.
Connection with people, connection with God. And I might say too, as I was thinking as you were talking about the previous issue, the bitterness thing or the guilt thing rather, that often the answer to guilt and getting rid of that is disclosure. If I can tell somebody about what I feel like I've done wrong, or if I can disclose that, if I can talk about it, if I can write about it, if I can pray about it, those are means of disclosure. And when that happens, the guilt tends to dissolve.
So you would say getting the anger out towards other people and also getting the guilt out. So just getting the emotions out. Again, write them out, sing them out, dance them out, yell them out. But when you get them out, especially with other people, they can help you put it in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the best healing mechanisms we have is to disclose what we're feeling badly about.
Yeah. And connecting with, it's funny, I hadn't thought about the connection with God. I don't know why I didn't mention that. But yeah, connection with other people, you can isolate and connect with God, but you still will wilt away because we're made for connection. God made us for connection with other people. And people, what will bring you through this, being out, not being alone. You don't want to be alone.
Right.
And I know in my times I had friends just come over. They just show up all the time. Like, no, you don't need to lay there. No, you don't need to sit out on the back porch all day long and stare up at the sky. You need to be with us. You need to go do something. And I was like, no, I don't. They go, yes, you do. And I thought they were so annoying. But I'm so thankful for them,
right.
And you did that too. You helped me tremendously. And so depression versus grief. Okay. I think that, you can just stay in that deep, deep, deep sadness, and that prevents you from grieving through the loss. I mean, there's stages to grief that you go through, and sadness and anger are very much a part of that. I mean, you do go into shock, and then you go in and out of anger and sadness, really, whichever one you're more comfortable with, right? Just like guilt or anger at other people, whichever one you're more comfortable with.
Right.
And so you go through that, but eventually you get to acceptance.
It seems to me that I agree with that. I think that self-acceptance is such a huge thing towards moving on. But if you deal well with guilt and isolation, then that's going to help you move from depression into
just grieving the loss.
Better with it.
Yeah. And grief, as you move through it, within 9 months, you're so much better if you're letting the grief happen, if you're letting the sadness and you're letting the anger, and you just let it be and you don't try to stuff that. You don't try to cover it. You just let it be. Then you will work through that. But also you backslide. People, I felt fine last week and now I've backslidden. No. That's how the body works. You go in and you go out, and you go in and you go out.
It's a process. Yeah.
Yes. The longer you can feel the pain, the better you're doing, because you're moving through it. And but you don't want to get stuck. If you get stuck, get help. Don't get stuck in depression or anger. How about avoidance versus courage? Because I know I got to the point that I was, and I had never been that way. I became kind of an avoider of conflict, an avoider of hard things, even answering the phone at times. I just got to the point I didn't answer the phone much. I did for work, but nothing else.
Right. And I was raised in an environment where it led me to avoid conflict at almost any cost. And I've had to really work out of that. So I've tended to avoid rather than to have the courage to do what needed to be done. I have not been a risk taker. That's come recently with me. And so I think it's important to think about that.
Well, and you know the destruction of that.
Yeah,
avoiding.
I sure do. Mm-hmm.
And so that can make you a victim. You
Right.
can become a victim by avoiding, and more losses by avoiding.
Right. So take courage and face it. And let's do something about it.
Yes, because courage doesn't mean you're not afraid, but you do it anyway.
No. Right,
and so
right.
we've done that. Powerless versus purpose. We don't want you powerless. We want you to have a purpose. And so taking the bad that's happened, the tragedy, the tornadoes in life, and you give it purpose. You turn it into a good and developing a purpose and get people to help you do that. Right now, everyone is helping everyone else, and that's a wonderful purpose. We wanted to mention to you, the Garland and Rowlett are having actually fundraisers, any kind of thing if you can volunteer, and this is in Texas. Mm-hmm. And so there is a website, or you can just Google it, where you can go and help out, either with money or your time. And it is, I can't remember that, rowlettgarland.org or rowlettrecovery.org.
Okay.
So we just really encourage you to do that, to just help out. If you can go online and just give, if you are around to go help, just go to the city hall in those cities and offer to volunteer. To help with people, open your homes for people that need homes. And so thank you so much, Dr. Slaughter, helping people know how to remove the emotional debris from tornadoes in life, natural disasters, and relationship disasters life throws at you. And so we hope this helps you in this new year. We love having you here for the new year. We want you to live well, and we thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Dr. Slaughter.
Have a great year.
Take care.
Thank you again for joining us. Living Well with Ann Beal airs live every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. We can't wait to see you again next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericaempowerment.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.